Hi there, I'm Ismail from Pearl Lemon. You've probably heard SEOs talk about crawl budget, usually in a dramatic way. For example, Google can't crawl your website. But here's the reality, most websites never have crawl budget problems. However, mid sized websites very often do, and they don't realize it. So for small websites, it's not a problem, but for mid sized websites, very often they do. Today, I'm going to show you how to check if crawl budget is hurting your rankings and exactly what to fix. Now, crawl budget simply means how many pages Google decides to visit on your website within a certain time. Google does not crawl your entire site every day, it prioritizes. If your important pages are not being crawled regularly, rankings become unstable or never improve. If your site has 5 pages, ignore this video. But if your website has blog posts, categories, tags, filtered pages, search result pages, then crawl budget absolutely matters. I suggest you get your pen and paper. This especially affects e-commerce stores, publishers, and growing business websites and large blogs. Googlebot doesn't know which pages are important. It learns from signals. So if your site generates thousands of low value URLs, Google spends its time crawling those instead of your important pages. Your best content then gets often crawled less often. And when a page isn't crawled, it can't improve in the rankings. Because crawling is Google's way of doing an inspection and checking, has this person improved on his content? And if they don't inspect your page, they are not going to know if you made improvements to your content. So they are not going to place you in a place that's suitable for your page based on the optimizations you've done. Here's where you check this. First things first, you want to open Google Search Console right here. Then you go to settings. Then right here in settings, you find crawl stats and you open report. So what are we looking for here? You're looking for patterns. If Google is crawling thousands of URLs daily, but your site only has a few hundred real pages, problem. It means Google is trapped in low value URLs, especially for filtered URL search pages and duplicate category pages. So let's go a bit deeper into this. Now, if you look at this report, you will see 3.27 total requests and 275 average response of 275 milliseconds. Some people might see this and start to panic because we don't have up to 200 pages on the website, but there is not a lot to panic about. Our first result here is the file type. As you can see, JavaScript and CSS are 41% and 32%. But there's no problem here. That doesn't automatically mean there's a crawl budget issue. But let's go back to the top. First thing to see is the total number of crawl requests. In this case, we are seeing just over 3,000 requests within this period. That is, it was last updated on the 22nd of February, which is 2 days ago. Um, for a site of this size, that's completely normal. Crawl budget problems usually happen on very large sites. Think tens of thousands of URLs. Smaller WordPress websites almost never have real crawl budget constraints. Now, this website is like 200 pages. That might seem large to the average person, but for an SEO website, it's chicken change. Now, let's look at the response codes. Now, this is where you might be able to detect a problem no matter the size of the site. 90% of requests are 200 status codes. That means 90% of our pages are loading properly. So that's very good. We have about 8 404s, which you can look at the pages and see if those are pages that are useful to you or not. So these are the 404 pages. They don't look like pages that are useful to us. So that's fine. And then we have pages that we redirected ourselves. So if 404s were much higher, like up to 20% or more, that would suggest broken internal links, deleted content, or poor site hygiene. So there are no major flags here. The 8% is actually quite fine. Now, another thing to look at is crawl purpose. 99% of crawling is for refresh. That means Google already knows this site structure and is simply rechecking existing URLs. If we saw a high percentage of discovery crawling, that would indicate excessive new URLs, parameter issues, or crawl traps. But that's not happening here. So you want the Googlebot to be recrawling pages that you already put in, and not, especially in situations where you're not creating a lot of new pages but you still have most of your crawl budget going into discovery. It's suspicious. That means your website is generating new URLs and Google is wasting crawl budget on them. Now, next, let's go to the file type. This is where people often misinterpret data. You see JavaScript at 41 and CSS at 32%. At first glance, it might look like a crawl waste because you know it's not the direct link of the website. You have plugins, Elementor Kit. You go back to the CSS and it's more or less the same thing. But it's not a problem. Modern websites, especially WordPress websites, are built with tools like Elementor, and those tools rely heavily on JavaScript and CSS. Google needs to crawl these files in order to render the page properly. Because if you block Google from scanning the files that are supposed to analyze what your page looks like, that means you are giving Google a fragmented version of your website, and you will be punished for that in the rankings. Blocking them would actually hurt SEO, not help it. Now, the next report to look at is the Googlebot type. This section confirms that 82% of our requests are for page resource load. That means Google is rendering the page, loading assets, and evaluating layout, mobile usability, and performance. That's normal and expected behavior. So, this site seems pretty normal, but when would there be a crawl problem? You likely have a crawl issue if important pages aren't being indexed. So you come here, you come to your HTML, and all you have to do is make sure that all your important pages, we have 198 here, and that seems right for this website, so we are good. Then the next thing, like I said earlier, if you see a high percentage of discovered currently not indexed error here based on the response, then there is a problem. If you see your crawl requests are dropping rapidly, there is also a problem. So you need it to be steady. So this is something worth looking at. Then, if server errors are increasing, then there's an issue. Then, if you have massive URL duplication or parameter bloat, so if you enter any of these categories and you see a URL repeating or duplicating, then there is a problem. That's when crawl optimization becomes necessary. Now, the next thing would be, how would you fix it if there was a problem? If there were a crawl budget issue, you would remove or no index low value pages, fix parameter duplication, you improve your internal linking, you clean up broken links and 404s, and you optimize your XML sitemap. You make sure that only pages that you want to be seen are in the XML sitemap. What you cannot do is to block crawling to JavaScript or CSS. So in this example, the crawl stats report shows a healthy, stable crawl pattern. There is no crawl budget emergency, and that is an important lesson. Not every high JavaScript percentage means there is a technical SEO problem. Always diagnose before you optimize. Now, coming back to our presentation, another check that you can do is to search for your URL. And here, what we are looking for is any page that should not be here, like old tags, internal search results, attachment pages, staging URLs. And from here, the only thing I can see is this sitemap 2 because there's nothing there. Let's just check for confirmation. You see, there's nothing here. So that we need to know index that because it is clearly stealing our crawl budget. Now, just to reiterate on some of the fixes that we can do, firstly, no index thin pages. If any page is thin, no index it. Block useless parameters in Robot.txt. So anything outside your HTML or CSS that you are seeing that isn't good, you just block it in your Robots.txt. We'll show more on that later. Then use canonicals on duplicates. Any page that is a duplicate, use a canonical on it or 301 redirect if it's that similar. And strengthen internal links to key pages. You need to make sure that key pages have internal links to them and from them. Now you are guiding the Googlebot. Now, what results are you expecting? When Google stops wasting time on useless URLs, something powerful happens. Your important pages get crawled more frequently. This leads to faster indexing, faster updates, more stable rankings. Many quote unquote SEO problems are crawl allocation problems. Most SEO advice focuses on creating more pages, but technical SEO often works the opposite way. You improve rankings not by adding more, but by helping Google focus. Control crawling, and you often unlock growth without writing a single new article. Now, we've come to the end of this video. If you found it useful, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We want to hear from you so much, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.